Devin Vassell, the one man that showed up in that game, like you mentioned. I forgot to talk about that, but I mean, just to see that from him in the big moments, that really makes you feel good about Devin Vassell moving forward into this offseason. He really showed the ability to be a sniper in that game, and it was kind of really good to see because in the latter half of the year, it felt like he kind of fell off when it came to his shooting. And like we know that he's a shooter, you can just tell by his form, but everybody has hot and cold spells. So to see him do that in the play-in game, it really boosted our confidence, or at least my confidence, and it was great to see that from Devin. Still only, I think he's 21 years old. 6'7", he's got some versatility. If you want to go small ball, obviously you and I would like to, make a little bit more of a push for some height on the team. But whenever it comes to Devin, he has that ability in the modern NBA to play 2 through 4, just with this height and length. So what were your thoughts on Devin kind of going into this offseason?
I'm happy with what he brought this year, averaging 12 points a game. But there's something about Devin going into next season that our other young guys really didn't have to experience, and that is there's nobody in front of him now. Like everybody else kind of had an excuse, like, oh, well, Keldon has DeMar playing in front of him, so obviously he's not going to be that productive. Same thing with DJ. They had a little bit longer of a window to kind of have that, oh, but he's just playing behind a bunch of vets. He hasn't had his opportunity yet. Next season at 21 years old, he's the starting two guard, barring any crazy free agency or draft night moves that we potentially might make. So he's got to up his production to at least, I would say, 15, 16 points per game on an efficient shooting clip. I'm talking getting closer and closer to that 40% mark from three and just adding a little bit of strength. He's already has the moves to create space and make shots happen for himself. We've seen it on a nightly basis. But I think if he just adds a little bit more strength, the shot will fall with more consistency and he'll be able to finish, amongst the trees a little bit more often. So hopefully that's what he works on this offseason and makes that next jump going forward.
Yeah, I feel like, what you just hit on, kind of driving towards the rim. I think that's really the area where he can improve because he has the ability, like you said. He has the ability to create, but he has the ability to drive too. It just seems like sometimes when you're watching those layups, he gets blocked or there's just a body there and he's not able to get the angle he wants. And that would be helpful if he was able to move the guys a little bit with some muscle. But another thing that I forgot to mention about Devin is in that second half of the season when he really took on that starting role after Derek was traded, you saw the improvement in the team, and I think that he definitely had something to do with that.
Yeah.
Obviously, like I mentioned, that opened things up for Keldon, but Devin Vassell's defense and the things that he does just off the ball, drawing attention because he's a shooter. There were so many things that didn't show up on the stat sheet that aren't necessarily quantifiable that he does that really, I think, they create wins. They're winning plays. That's the best way that I would describe him. So you love to see that from him.
And one last thing about Devin, last offseason, he was really getting practice touches with the second unit, being that like first guy off the bench as far as scoring the basketball. And then he had halfway through the season with the Derek White trade, moved into the starting lineup. I'm sure that was like a big, mental hurdle to kind of get over, figure out where he fits next to DJ and Keldon, all these guys.
Yep.
So having one more offseason to build that chemistry and figure out where he can get his shots, I think he'll look really like a lot better next season.
Yep, and he's going to have more opportunity too. He is going to be an off-ball. Like he's probably going to be like, I want to do what I did in the play-in game every game. And he can be a star. He's somebody, like I said, I believe has the potential to develop because his mid-range game even, and his length too that I've mentioned on this show before. He's just such a versatile player. And it'll be really interesting to see how he rises because if he starts becoming a stud, it's going to be really fun to watch. But Eric has one more question about him. So is Devin a 2 or a 3? If so, does he start at the 3 and Keldon stays at the 4? I think we're going to continue playing him at the 2. Maybe not. I don't know. I was thinking about this today because the other guy I mentioned is Primo, and this is a little bit off topic, Ethan, but I got a question for you. Do you think that the Spurs will go with the DeJounte, Primo, Devin, Keldon, Jakob lineup? Do you think that's their dream? You think that's what they want?
Well, that's what they certainly did down the stretch of the season. I wouldn't
because that way you can play all those guys.
Yeah, it would be a complete 180 from the normal Spurs way of doing things, which is just putting Primo at the end of the bench and going with what we know. So in that case, I'd be for it. But I really want to draft or sign a guy that can play the four spot. That's just taller. I mean, no knock against Keldon. He's just 6'5". Came into the league as a shooting guard, and he's playing the four spot,
Yeah.
and he's giving it his best out there. But when we play these guys that are versatile and long, like a Herb Jones and a Jackson Hayes and a Valanciunas, I mean, Keldon was locked up. He couldn't do anything offensively or
And it's not
defensively.
his fault.
It's
Yeah.
not. It's just a system thing. Like there's nothing he can do. Um, so I'd rather him play at the three and have Primo come off the bench because then Primo can really be that primary ball handler too. I know we'll get into that here in a second, but I wouldn't be mad necessarily, and unless they just absolutely didn't draft a four and they just decided to roll out the exact same team with no with no backup four,
Yeah.
and then I'd be
And
a little upset.
I was thinking about that. It's funny you mentioned that because that's exactly what I was thinking about. I was like, man, I was looking at this roster and I was like, we really could just run it back.
Hmm.
Like, and I would, and that's that. Now I think that's what we're gonna do. But anyways, in regards to Eric's question, I think it kind of just depends on what the Spurs do. I see him. I think naturally he's a three, but I think if we keep Keldon and move him to the three, then I think Devin will stay at two. But the thing is, he's such a good shooter, and he's fast too. That's the other
Hmm.
thing. And he's such a good perimeter defender. It's like you can kind of play him anywhere, which is one of his biggest benefits.
Yeah, he's a matchup nightmare.
Yep.
Oof.